One thing I started to notice after treating shoulders for several years was that people just kept ending up in the same place. They'd put in the work, they'd do the rehab, and their shoulder would start to settle down. They might even get back to the course, the gym, or whatever it was they actually wanted to do, but it wasn't soon long after that their shoulder would be right back to where it was before. I had a guy who got back under the bar for his first time in 8 months. It felt great. But after 2 weeks, he couldn't lift his shoulder above his head. Another guy who was finally back to hitting golf balls at the course, so he booked a full tournament. He felt good, but after the sixth hole, he was in pain, and the next day, his shoulder was useless. It was at this time that I recognized that we weren't measuring success by the right markers. After seeing that pattern over and over again, I realized we were measuring recovery by the wrong finish line. It wasn't just one or two people. It was a pattern that happened over and over again. And once I realized that, it completely changed the way I think about shoulder rehabilitation. So let me tell you what I actually think is going on. Now, shoulder pain returning is not an uncommon problem. In fact, it's something I see quite frequently. And traditional physical therapy isn't to blame. The problem is that people naturally judge their recovery by one thing, and that's pain. However, pain going down and being able to return to your previous activities are two completely different things. And in fact, that's when things can start to go quite wrong. Let me give you a real example of what this actually looks like. Let me tell you about my client, Ben. Ben is a high-level competing jiu-jitsu athlete who had a long duration of shoulder pain. He went through traditional shoulder rehabilitation through physical therapy, and he got out of pain, but he couldn't get back to the actual training that he wanted to do. Ben wanted to be able to bench press because with jiu-jitsu, you need an immense amount of strength to be able to press people off of you, and the bench press is a great example of that. However, every time he actually tried to bench press, his shoulder would flare up and he'd be back to where he was before. And the problem there is that it got him back to training, but it wasn't the training that he actually wanted to do. There was a gap there between what pain-free was and what he actually needed to be able to do, which was get under the bar so that he can strengthen his body to compete in jiu-jitsu. This wasn't just an exception of one person, but it's a pattern that happens over and over. You see, pain and capacity aren't the same thing. Carrying some grocery bags isn't the same thing as bench pressing. Reaching into a cupboard overhead isn't the same as overhead pressing. And walking your dog is not the same as being able to push a 300-pound guy off you in a jiu-jitsu tournament. And that's the difference, is that there's a gap between doing things for your everyday life and the actual goals you have for the activities that you want to complete. And your training and rehabilitation should match those two things. And so that's what ultimately changed my perspective about shoulder rehabilitation, was that I wasn't just in the interest of getting somebody's shoulder to feel better. I was more interested in how are we gonna get you back to doing the thing that you really want to do most. Because for me, recovery isn't just about reducing pain, it's about getting that person back to the life that they actually want to live. And so if you've spent months or even years trying to get your shoulder out of pain and back to doing the things you want to do, only for that pain to come back when you actually are doing the things you want to do, I think you'll find what I'm putting together quite useful. I'm going to be creating a free wait list that I'm going to be posting things I don't really post publicly, more resources, more information, and I'm going to be hosting a limited number of coaching spots, and the people on that wait list will be the first ones to be notified. If that sounds interesting at all to you, I have that information in the description below, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.